Hi, everyone. My name is Bhavani Patel, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Be the Change by Beam Data. We are a nonpartisan civic action app that connects Pennsylvanians to the General Assembly to provide legislative input and keep track of updates that are coming out of Harrisburg. Today, I'll be in conversation with Senator Wayne Fontana, discussing a few different issues, but primarily focusing on mail-in voting. Thank you for joining us today, Senator Fontana.
My pleasure. Glad to be here.
So I'd like to start off by kind of just asking you a little bit about yourself. What areas do you represent? What committees do you sit on? How long have you been serving? And what sort of motivates you personally to serve in the state Senate?
Well, I represent half the city of Pittsburgh and 19 other municipalities that circle downtown Pittsburgh, basically. I go in every direction, east, west, north, and south. So I have municipalities all in that area, plus a lot of the city. As far as committees are concerned, right now I'm the minority chair of the Finance Committee. I'm a member of the Community and Economic Recreational Development Committee, Games and Fish, Law and Justice, Roles and Executive Nominations, and Urban Affairs and Housing. How long I was first elected in 2005. I was reelected in 2006 because 2005 was a special election. 2010, 2014, and 2018, I've been reelected. As far as what motivates me, obviously, I think all of us that are in office, we hope to be a voice for our constituents, especially those that maybe have a hard time being heard. But I feel like I'm elected by my constituents, and they want me to advance their ideals and goals, and I feel obligated to do that every day. So I want to make my Senate district a better place to live, work, and play, and that's the goal.
That's incredible. So you sit on a lot of committees. That's a full plate, and you also seem to have a lot of experience serving in this seat, which is incredible. And I think that's going to make this conversation even more valuable. There's a lot that's been happening in this past year with COVID-19. It's impacted Pennsylvania at large, and I'm sure your district, just given the wide array of populations that you serve and the different businesses that you represent in your district. With sort of the history of what you've seen in this past year, what are your two top priorities in terms of issues that impact your district currently, and sort of how do you see that playing out in the coming months as we kind of head into recovery?
Yeah, there's a lot of priorities, I guess, but jobs are top of the list. I mean, we need to get those that have lost their jobs from businesses that either went out of business or downsized. We need to talk about education, workforce development. They're probably at the top of the list as far as the pandemic is concerned, and coming out of that. There's a lot of federal dollars coming into each state, each local government. We have to try to prioritize that right now into areas that are the worst, were affected the worst by this pandemic. So I think jobs are the top of the list, and workforce development, and of course, education is always there. We need to educate people. We need young people. We need to make sure they have a road to success through education. So, that's an everyday battle. These are everyday battles. And then obviously there's gun reform that needs to be talked about, and environmental issues that are out there also. So they're all, to me, at the top of the list in those first 4, 5, 6, but jobs are at the top of the list.
Yeah, jobs and education, it seems like it cuts across the board. And I think COVID-19 has sort of exacerbated many of those things.
Right.
You do have important gun legislation that you're also you're spearheading, and I hope people will take time to check that out as well. But the primary focus of our conversation today is SB 128, and you're championing this bill. It focuses on allowing elections in PA to be conducted by mail. And before we get into like the sort of specifics of the legislation in your own words, I was wondering if you could provide a little bit of context. And when I say context, I mean that I believe in 2019, the General Assembly passed significant legislation, Act 77, which was initiated by Republicans to allow mail-in voting in Pennsylvania. And since then, there have been a lot of fears and sort of questions about elections being stolen if primarily conducted by mail. I'm sure you're hearing from your constituents a lot about this. Can you talk about some of the fears that have been, the feedback that you've been getting from constituents around fears, and, what's your perspective on how to address those questions and ensure fairness in election if we do go this route of mail-in voting?
Right. A lot of my emails, quite frankly, are not from my constituents. They're from all over the country. But in my constituents in my senatorial district, I don't get a whole lot about that this has been a fraud and those kinds of things. Most of those emails are coming from all over the country, everywhere, and so and quite frankly, those fears are based on, in my opinion, lies and deceit. I think you mentioned Act 77. There was only one Republican that voted against Act 77 in 2019. Only one, and which included, obviously, in Act 77, it included the provisions for mail-in voting, like you said. Again, only one. It kind of blows your mind that all of a sudden they're all on a different page. But many of these elected officials that voted for it are clamoring to get rid of it, and the mail-in voting part of it, for sure. I think mail-in voting, and the funny part about my legislation, I wrote it before the pandemic. This was been out there because I researched Oregon and Colorado and California, even Utah, which is a Republican state. I researched them to see how it was going. I mean, we certainly don't want to embrace something that's not secure or safe, but it increased voting like you can't believe, and that's which motive and the convenience, because of convenience. But it was important to note that it had to be secure, and there was very, 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 very little instances of any kind of fraud, even with the mail-in. So as we move forward, I wrote it. No one paid much attention to it when I first wrote it, quite frankly. Then the Republicans came with Act 77, and it opened it up. The governor embraced some of it, and we started to move forward. I've been a proponent of based on Oregon's mail-in for a long, long time. Like I said, even before that. So this is just what's happening today. Is blatant voter suppression. It's just an attempt to suppress vote, because the convenience of mail-in voting is obvious. I mean, the increase already, I think there was a stat out this morning by Allegheny County saying it's almost over 700 million people, or I mean, they're just 700,000 people already applied for mail-in ballots. I mean, it's the demand is there. There's no question about it. And if you didn't feel it was secure, you wouldn't be doing it, right? You wouldn't do it. So all those folks are already mailing in. I got my ballot over the weekend. It'll be in the mail tonight. I think, you can sit at your table and you can read it and analyze it. You want to talk to your mate or your partner, or whoever, you can do that, right? You can research it and all that kind of thing. So I can't see the downside to it. I really can't. And I know they want you to, present your photo ID and all that. And you don't need to. There's a barcode there. There's a signature on it. The barcode is for you and me, whoever it is. And it's very, very secure. So,
yeah. Well, thank you for diving into that. And it seems like you've done extensive research, and that's interesting that you were championing this even before the pandemic. And
right.
So because you've done this research and you've seen how other states are, promoting this and kind of implementing it, can you kind of go into the key points of SB 128? Why do you think it's important, given that other states have done it? And you kind of already touched on this, but from the perspective of building a healthier and engaged democratic system, you talked about the ease of voting. Can you dive a little bit more deeper into what you think in terms of expanding voting and getting people more engaged in the process of, knowing who's on the ballot and why this matters and just participating?
Yeah, I think, just the fact that I know, as I mentioned, I got my ballot over the weekend. So it gave me time to look at it. Gave me time to stand there or sit there and just go through, and especially there's 39 judges running, right, in Allegheny County. It gave you a chance to look at each one. And then if you wanted to do some research, you could actually do that. This is absolutely helping more people have a voice, and an informed voice, because you have time to look at these things and deal with it. You don't have to just, somebody hands you a slate at the polling place. It's that stuff's all gone right now. So it acts, without a doubt, enables voters to have a bigger voice, a more informed voice, and a more frequent voice to voting. I think one of the other key parts of the legislation is the pre-canvassing. You need to start counting votes, because that was part of the problem, right? That the votes come in after, or the ballots come in after election night, and they were challenged. That's because Allegheny County, for example, couldn't start counting until that day. My bill says you could start 7 days ahead of time. So with all that, that's just something, things that you look at the other states. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You look at the other states, they can pre-canvass ahead of time. They can start, even if you go back in registration, when do you stop the registration, new registers, right? You know, no more registrations after a certain date. You have to give a lot of lead time to these things. The Commissioners Association, for example, CCAP, all endorse pre-canvassing and the mail-in voting. Everybody knows that it's more convenient. Everybody knows it's as secure as anything else that you do and can do, even with the photo ID. So I think everyone's bought into it as far as believing in it. Not everyone, but a lot of our voters, obviously, and even Republican voters, quite frankly. Donald Trump voted by mail. So, you know, they know it's more convenient. They know it's secure, but yet the battle here is strictly to suppress vote, in my opinion.
So thank you for that. So that's incredibly enlightening, and you kind of touched on a lot of details there. So say like somebody wants to kind of go and learn more about this legislation and weigh in on it. Do you have tips of how they can find out more and how they can give you their feedback?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, you know, personally, I read all my emails. People think I'm crazy. I read every single one of them. We respond to our constituent emails because I feel obligated. That's what I'm here to do. I'm in the office more than I probably should be. Or, you know, but I live close, I guess. But you could go to my website, www.senatorfontana.com, and learn more about this bill and any of the other bills that I talk about. But you can bet in the next few weeks, there's going to be a lot of information out there about just to read in the newspapers and on the internet to read about it. So I'm happy to take calls in my office. If anyone wants to call 412-344-2551, I'm happy to talk to them directly. I do have an e-news, by the way. It goes out every week. Every Tuesday, it's out. I do an e-jobs a couple of times a month. You can sign up for that. My staff does a great job putting it together. So, you know, it's about being transparent. It's about being, you know, informational. It's about letting people know what's going on in their government. So I'm happy to do that at any time.
That's fantastic. And so my last question to round out this conversation. So Be the Change, as you already know, focuses on civic engagement and building more dialogue at the state level and, you know, encouraging people to focus on state government as opposed to just federal and local. So if you had to leave our audience with one final piece of advice on the importance and value of engaging with state government, what would you tell them?
And it's easy. It's absolutely easy. As I mentioned to you, Be the Change is one way to communicate with me, along with my email address and phone numbers. It's so important today and should be, and obviously a lot easier from my young days. You had to go find your legislator. Now you can find it right on the internet, right with e-news or with Be the Change, with other organizations out there. But it's important to have a voice. I read all my emails every day because I want to know what people think. I don't agree with every single one of them, obviously, but I'm happy to discuss it with anybody. And every legislator should be like that. So if you have a legislator who doesn't want to talk about it or doesn't want to respond to your email, I'd question that person. But your voice should be heard. In today's world, it's a lot easier to do than it used to be. So do it. Absolutely.
Well, there you have it, folks. Thank you for spending time with us today, Senator Fontana. That was incredibly informative. So don't forget to check out Be the Change at changeourstate.com and weigh in on legislative issues. Senator Fontana is also available on Be the Change, so you can connect with him about SB 128 as well. Thank you.
Take care.